Welcome to Sum of Your Parts podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, premier pelvic health expert and women's wellness warrior. Join me as we discuss women's wellness topics and discuss tips and tricks with top elite health experts, and where you'll discover that you're greater than the sum of your parts. I'm excited to have with us today Dr. Susan Lovelle. Dr. Susan Lovelle is the holistic lifestyle doctor and the founder of Premier Wellness. Although she spent 17 years as a professional ballet dancer, she knew at the age of 6 that she would be a physician because even then she wanted to help everyone around her feel better. After medical school and general surgery training at Columbia Presbyterian in New York City, she specialized in plastic surgery for over 20 years, but began to feel more fulfilled by supporting women to heal from the inside out. Now she specializes in finding customized wellness solutions for busy, overextended women who are merely surviving on caffeine and willpower. Whether it's to lose 20 pounds, gain more energy and focus, or even sleep through the night, Dr. Susan and Premier Wellness team help you to discover your one signature way of living so that you can experience the healthy, long, and joyful life you want and deserve. And today we'll be speaking with Dr. Susan Lovelle. Thank you, Dr. Susan, for being with me today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
So you have a really interesting background, and people who listen to my podcast know that I really love people's backstories and how they got to where they are. So you started out as a ballerina.
Yes. So it's interesting because, believe it or not, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor when I was 6 years old because I fell in love with my pediatrician. I went in, I loved him, thought he was wonderful. And I essentially said, I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up. And he said, when you're ready, you come back and ask me. And literally 20 years later, I went back to him. He was still in practice. I asked him and he wrote a letter for me. And I think that had a lot to do with me getting into medical school.
Wow.
But in addition to that, I used to be the type when I was growing up, I would be home on Saturday mornings and I just turn on the cartoons and I literally watch cartoons all Saturday. One Saturday morning, my mom came in. She said, "That's it. No more of this." She took me out. We went to dance class, and that was the beginning of that career. I literally went to dance class, loved it. It was ballet. And I started dancing. Actually got to perform with the Catherine Dunham dance troupe with the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. Yeah. So that was a wonderful experience. But I did that for the next 17 years.
Oh my goodness, that's a good amount of time too.
Years, yeah.
Great experience.
It was. We traveled the United States, the Caribbean, to Europe, and I had experiences that I never would have had any other way. It was just amazing, yeah. And it was interesting because the year that I got into college, my first year in college at Barnard in New York City, I also got to start touring with the company. And this is when they were going to Europe and et cetera. And so I tried it for that first year. I tried doing both, but I was out for almost 3 months out of that year. And the college did not really like that. So the next year I just said, I'm going for it. And I went full time into dancing. We toured all over the place. And I just did my college stuff on distance learning, or if I would come back and they had a class, I would do it that way. It's interesting.
It's different. Like nowadays, you could have done it online, but exactly. Back then, we didn't have that.
You had to be in the class, and if you weren't in the class, you didn't get the credit. So people laugh because when I applied to medical school, because literally I would come back from tour, find the college that had the course that I needed when I decided I was going to go to medical school and take it there. So when I finished, I had 7 different colleges on my transcript.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't want to have to try to get all those transcripts.
It was a mess. But I lucked out in that Columbia that year was literally looking for someone who, not just me, but looking for a student body that had a lot of different things, that they had different backgrounds. And so I had been a dancer, I had done all this touring, and they accepted me. They accepted somebody who was in the Olympics. I mean, just really a wide range of people. It was a wonderful year.
So did you know when you were doing all this dancing and trying to fit in college on the side, did you know at that point in time you were still like wanting to head down that medical career?
For most of college, now I'm going to admit how long it took me to go through college. It literally was 10 years. I started, so 10 years to get that all done. And so when I first started, no, I didn't. I was just kind of going because, in my family, you went to college. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. You went to college. And so I was doing this while I was dancing. But then towards the end, when dancing was really getting to be really painful and not as much fun as it used to be, then I started thinking, maybe I need to do something else. And I literally came back from one tour, and this is amazing. I went to a restaurant because I wanted to get a job as a waitress. We had a short-term job. Couldn't get a job as a waitress because I was overqualified. And I said, this is ridiculous. I'm going to medical school.
I love that.
And that's when I decided, and that's when I started taking those courses, whatever it was I needed science-wise, the organic chemistry and all of those things. Took them one course at a time whenever I came back.
And I know, like, I've been in that place where, you're in medical school. And did you know what you wanted to go into when you were in medical school?
I didn't.
I didn't either. That's okay. Because I was like, all of a sudden I found myself, okay, now I'm here. And, you had those people that were like, I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. And I was like, yeah, I have no clue.
No clue.
I was like, doctor was, I didn't think past that.
Exactly. For instance, in my family, we actually have, and it's not a funny thing, unfortunately, we have a degenerative neurologic disease that runs in my family. And so when I went to medical school, that was in the back of my head. I said, I'm going to be a neurologist so I can figure out what it was. We didn't even know what it was back then.
Oh, wow.
So I figured I was going to be a neurologist, went in there, and then I went to the first anatomy class, and there was this open chest, and I was like, wow, this is wonderful. And it was one of those things where you could tell the surgeons versus the non-surgeons, just because, the surgeons were like, this is great. And they're like all in there, and all the non-surgeons are like, no, that's okay. So I pretty much knew right from the beginning that I wanted to be in surgery, but it took going through the different rotations when I was in my third year to really kind of start honing that down. I didn't decide on plastics until my third year, late in my third year, which was very late for some people.
I'm wondering too, and I hope you don't mind me asking you, did you have any issues? Because to do plastics, you have to do general surgery first.
Yes.
And did you have any issues because I'm saying this because I did, with the boys club of general surgery?
Okay.
I know I'm opening a can of worms now.
Right. Okay. So I went to Columbia University for my general surgery. And they had the thing with categorical, and then I even forget what they call them at this point. So they had 5 categoricals, which means that you started your first year and you were guaranteed to finish your 5th year, because it's 5 years in general. Everybody else was whatever they call that, and they would come in and sort of do, and each year would get narrower and narrower. So it was kind of like a pyramid, except the 5 knew that they were going to finish.
Yes.
So my year, in my big class, there were 3 women who applied for general surgery. Prior to this, there had not been any. Okay, so we're all looking at, you sit in the big room and they tell you what your thing is, and they call out the first girl's name for the 5 year, and the 2 of us who were like, okay, that was the one, so that's it. Then they called the second one. And then they called, and I think I was the second, and then the third one. So they called all 3 of us. So 3 out of 5 years were women.
Oh,
unheard of. Totally unheard of. We found out, we were ecstatic. We found out as we were going through that they thought that we were going to drop out for whatever reason. And so they thought it was a safe bet that they would take these 3 women. Well, guess what? We fooled them all. We all finished. I went into plastics, 1 went into general surgery, and then 1 went into thoracic surgery. So we all finished and all went on into like bigger careers. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, our general surgery program was actually easier than when I went to plastics. I went to another institution for plastics, and there it was even worse. I mean, I don't know how I would have survived there. As far as how women were treated, and yeah, even in plastics, which is a lot easier in that sense. I had my second child when I was in plastic surgery.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
I'm
So
sure they love that.
Oh, yeah. Well, they could care less because I got no slack. I literally remember running to the emergency room, 9 months pregnant, holding my belly, running to the ER to go take care of people. I had 2 weeks of vacation. That was it. So when I was 3 days into my vacation, and I told my obstetrician, "You got to deliver me now because I only have 2 weeks and I have to get back." And I did.
Oh my goodness, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and it's like then all of the guys were kind of like, well, this is not hard. You're pregnant. What's the difference? Then years later, when their wives had babies, then they're like, how did you do that? How did you, but that's what it was. You had 2 weeks. That was it. And there were no excuses or anything. Yeah.
I had a funny story. There was an attending I used to do surgery with, and I'd walk in the operating room and he'd be like, "Oh no, not you." And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "What am I going to talk to you about?" And so I would go home and study the sports page instead of studying my general surgery so that I had something to talk about.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, yeah.
So then you go through general surgery, and now plastics is training additional to general surgery.
Right.
So at what point in the general surgery do you go, hey, plastics sounds like a thing I want to do?
Mm-hmm. So you had 2 ways of going through plastics. You could either do 5 years and 5 years of general and 2 years of plastics, which is what I did, or you could do 3 and 3. And so I had gone through, I was in my 4th year, actually, right before 4th year of general surgery. And that's when you're really rotating through all of the real subspecialties. And so the one that I did right before that was vascular, which is a lot of very, very sick people with really bad surgeries. And they had this saying, which was really kind of macabre, which was fem pop, fem stop, chop chop. And that's what it was that entire month. It was like all of these really, really sad surgeries. And then my next rotation was plastics. And I'm like, these people are happy. They're, we're making their lives better. And so I decided at that point, which was really pretty late, 4th year of general surgery, to decide to go into plastics. But it really worked out. Somebody had dropped out in the program. I was able to slip in, and it worked out perfectly.
And then you did that for a while. You've done that for how many years?
Plastic surgery for 22 years. 22
Great.
years.
And now what are you doing?
So now what I do is holistic medicine, and how I came about that. So from the dancing, let's go all the way back to the dancing years. When I was dancing, we did whatever we had to do to stay thin. So say Monday to Friday, I would eat salad. That was pretty much it. During the week, that was it. And then on the weekends, when I knew I didn't have to be in leotards and everything, I would eat whatever I wanted. So literally, I'd walk out of the dance studio, walk to the train station. There was a Blimpie there, like those big Subway sandwiches. I'd get a Blimpie and the chips and the cookies, eat it on the way home. And the next morning, I'd wake up like, not only this, but my stomach would be bloated, everything would be swollen. I'm just thinking, well, maybe I ate too much. And I did that for years, and I got away with it because I was young.
Yeah.
But when I started going to medical school, now I'm not doing the activity. Now I'm sitting all day long. And because I don't have to be 100 pounds anymore, I would eat whatever I wanted. I finally moved to North Carolina, and the chicken and the biscuits and the everything ended up being about 35 pounds on top of what I had already. So that on me, and I'm short, I'm about 5'2". So that was a lot of extra weight. you add that to the years of dancing and hip surgery, hip arthritis and things, and I ended up not only gaining the weight, but going through what I know now was more adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
And then I had three DVTs, three clots in my legs, which went to my
Wow.
lungs.
Oh God, that's scary.
Yeah. Oh yeah. After the second one, and they had me on blood thinners when this happened. So after the second one, they put a filter in so that it wouldn't go to my lungs anymore. And then they said, okay, after a year, they took me off the blood thinners just to see what happened. Whole leg clotted up, entire leg. Yeah. So at that point, I was each time I was in the ICU, but that third time I developed this really nasty staph infection, almost died. And I said, okay, it's time to get my life together, And so I started with changing what I was eating. For me, it worked out because I tried every diet on the planet.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Right. For me, it was paleo. That works the best for me. And so that's what I went to. And then I added yoga because I wanted to move, but I didn't want to do exercise. And so I did that, added mindset, and literally slowly but surely changed my life. And the final thing was when I found out that I had gut issues, and that's why I'm so passionate about that today. Even with all of the changes I made, I was a lot better. But then I developed this horrendous rash, like full body, that was so itchy, and I would find myself like scratching myself up on the wall. It was horrendous. And it turned out I went to a functional medicine practitioner eventually because I tried the traditional steroids and topicals and none of that worked. And it turned out simple. I was allergic to eggs. And not allergic, but sensitive to eggs because of leaky gut.
Wow.
So we healed the gut. I took the eggs out and voila. And I'm like, why don't we know this? And so I went back for training, got that information, and for a while was doing plastics and the functional medicine piece, trying to put them together. And eventually I just realized I was just so much more fulfilled with the other, that that's the way I wanted to go.
It's funny because I kind of have a similar story in that, doing surgery for years and then my own health. And then when you start looking into things, because you're trying to heal yourself, and you find these holistic things and you go, oh my God, there's so much I don't know. And why don't I know this? And then it's hard. Once you find that information, it's like Pandora's box. Once you open up that information, it's almost hard to go back to the way you were before and what you were doing before. So.
Exactly. And when you talk to most people who are in the holistic realm, they have similar stories, not necessarily, what actually happens, but the fact that either it's for themselves or for someone close to them, they had to figure out what was going on. And they do, it may take a while, but they figure it out. And it's like, whoa, why didn't we know this? But I don't know about you, we got a week, maybe 2 weeks of nutrition. School.
I think maybe even like a day. Like it was very, it was like.
Exactly. And it's such a huge part of health. It's just amazing to me. Yeah.
I'm surprised to be finding out just how much of our health is connected to our gut. And I mean, I'm still learning, so I'm sure you know a lot more about this than I do, but.
Exactly. It's like we people talk about mood, and things like if you're, I shouldn't say, like, what is it when you go back and forth?
So like manic or bipolar?
Manic depressive or, the bipolar. Yeah. Something of that sort. And there's a lot of, most of the serotonin that balances most of this is in our gut. And when our guts aren't working, then the whole axis doesn't work properly. But one of the main drugs that is given, the serotonin reuptake, SSRIs, actually influences the gut and makes it worse. So it injures the gut, number one, and two, it makes them more and more reliant on that particular medication. So it's like, why are we treating with this? And it's not only healing, it's actually hurting. And you have to start thinking, well, if you're giving something that in and of itself makes you need it more, doesn't that sort of, it makes sense on their end, but on the health end, it's just amazing.
So how does someone know if they have an issue with their gut?
There are several ways, because one of the big things is that gut issues don't always show up in the gut. Like with me, it was a rash, and it wasn't until I got this rash that drove me crazy that I started looking back and found, okay, well, I get bloated after this, or I had issues, and so usually you look at what's going on in their lives. And they can go either one of two ways. They can either follow and just do more of an elimination kind of diet to see if taking things out, changing things makes a difference. If not, there are specific tests you can do. Some of them look at the bacteria in the gut, in the flora, whether or not it's high up in the body versus lower down. Various things like that will let you know as well.
And things like our diet can affect our gut health.
Oh,
correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How does that happen?
So essentially there's something that's called, your gut starts at your mouth, goes in this tube that goes esophagus all the way down and comes out the other end. So it's literally a tube. And when you eat food and start digesting food, the nutrients go into your bloodstream. That's a good thing. Sometimes, though, if we're eating something that we're sensitive to, like for instance with me with eggs, it makes openings in the gut wall, which then lets food or other things come into the bloodstream. Well, the body doesn't like that, so it sends white blood cells to kind of go there and blow them up and everything. That makes inflammation. The inflammation can either be in your gut or your joints or your skin, like mine was, or headaches. It can affect anywhere, and so it's really a matter of finding out whether or not it's starting in the gut. Well, a lot of disease starts in the gut, but then finding out where it's affecting us. Even something like autoimmunity, which is huge, like Hashimoto's and Sjogren's and various things like that, like thyroid disease, and are related to our gut. A lot of that starts in the gut. And so rather than just treating, say, with either an anti-inflammatory or with thyroid hormone or something else, it's better to take a step back and figure out why the person developed this thyroid disease versus just saying, okay, they have thyroid issues, let's just throw some medication at it. And you can sometimes reverse things.
Yeah, because it's my understanding that a lot of the medicines that we're giving for symptom relief, like you said before, actually can worsen the gut. Like I was thinking in particular, say if you actually have gut symptoms and you're on like antacids or like proton pump inhibitors, now we're affecting the acidity level of your stomach, which is going to affect your flora. And it's like,
it's amazing. It's like this whole cycle. Yeah. I mean, just think about the things that we take. And if we have GERD, if we have reflux disease, like you said, what's the first thing you think of? You think of taking an antacid so you don't feel it so much. Well, that's actually the problem. It's not that you have too much acid. Often is that you don't have enough. And so your body actually opens up that valve. And so sometimes the answer is actually to increase your digestive enzymes and your hydrochloric acid so that your body can heal and the valve can work properly. So it's really a matter of knowing what the cause is rather than, as you said, just treating the symptom.
And I think too, like with all the processed foods that we eat, like it really it affects our gut microbiome, which keeps us healthy.
Exactly. There was something I was looking at recently, and you can literally change your gut flora, within 48 hours.
Really? That's soon. I didn't realize that.
Whether you're going good or bad. And so, I mean, that's just amazing. And we see that often with, people that I'm working with, and they'll have, they have the typical SAD diet, standard American diet, with processed foods and fried foods and cheeseburgers and whatever. And you take them off of that, and they may go through a period of withdrawal almost, and there's reason for that too. But they often feel so much better so quickly, and it's really because things can really change very, very quickly.
What is the reason that they get that, like, withdrawal symptoms?
Mm-hmm. You, for instance, something like, let's go with that combination of carb and fat, like
Okay.
potato chips or French fries or something like that. That combination actually sets off neurotransmitters that make you happy. The same way that sometimes, like if you're running, you get the hormone high. You can get that same sort of thing from that specific combination of fat and carbohydrate. And when you pull it away, it literally is like you're taking away that drug that you loved. And you then you can actually go through periods of feeling like you're in withdrawal. That's why it can be so difficult to stop eating certain foods.
I think it's probably, it would be great if everybody could kind of catch all this stuff in their systems before it happened and like kind of heal it naturally. But, with the amount of Americans that are on prescription medicine, like when you have like clients or when you are just with this subject in general, where does somebody start if all of a sudden they're finding out this information and they're like, all right, I'm on, this long list of medications? Because usually it starts out with one medication because that affects your system. Then you have other symptoms and then it snowballs.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's a wonderful question. And it actually leads into the way I like to work with my clients. And it's to find out their unique way, their unique path towards health. And something that I've actually developed is what I call the power wheel. And it's a little wheel, and they grade themselves from 1 to 10 in certain aspects. My tagline is eat, move, live, love. So eat elite, move more, live wisely, and love divinely. And so you tag yourself in those things, and you graft it out, and then they actually have a visual of what it is that's sapping their power and their energy in a particular thing. And that's where we start. Because otherwise, it's like, if someone's not feeling well, how do you know exactly where to start?
And it's overwhelming too.
It's overwhelming, exactly. But it gives them a picture, and then we say, okay, this is where we're going to start, and then we go systematically through with that. Yeah.
Do you find that, is there some like more, I know everyone's individual, but is there like a certain pattern that you see more often where people tend to start and get success? Or
Mm-hmm. Usually, at least with the clients that are coming to me, and I pretty much focus on busy women entrepreneurs and leaders.
Yeah.
So, we're burning ourselves out, and who because it's who I was,
Yeah.
burning yourself out. And a lot of the times, starting with their diet is the least, it has the fastest results, and it's probably the easiest. And the other thing that I ask them to do at the same time is to add a little bit more mindfulness in their day. Because again, most of us, we get up in the morning, the first thing our minds are like, and we over like that the entire day. And so just that little bit lowers their cortisol, lets their thyroid start to heal. It's really just a matter of those two things together. Those are usually what we start with. Yeah.
That group of people, I've definitely fallen into that. And
no.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting, having gone through medical school and residency and practice and now out of clinical practice. I remember when I was so busy with work and being like, gosh, I wish I could just get a day off. If I could just get a day off. And now I find myself, having neck surgery and having a lot more than just a day off. And I realized that it wasn't just my career, that it, maybe it's a personality trait, that it was me, because my husband makes fun of me all the time. He's like, do you realize there's nothing you absolutely have to be doing right now? Oh. And yet I'm busy from the morning, the time I wake up in the morning to the time I go to bed, because it's like, I want to create, I want to do good in the world. I have all these ideas, especially the entrepreneur side of me. I'm like, I have all these ideas and want to start them all at once. And really, I've become aware of this idea of adrenal fatigue, and that's another organ that we don't really learn about that in medical school. I mean, I can't even remember like any lectures on the adrenal gland. It probably was mentioned as a side fact, like here it is, above the kidneys and Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
But I think it's tough for women that are entrepreneurs or career driven or even moms at home. I mean, because we tend to put everything else before ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
And
how do you deal with, or what can you tell people about that?
well, the first thing is to make them aware of it, because I think to know and not to do is not to know. So we don't really know it until it affects us. Unfortunately, a lot of the times we don't stop until something stops us.
Yeah.
We were both talking about things that kind of like made us say, okay, enough is enough. And so I will tell my story, and I'll tell stories of others who have done that in the hopes that they will hear and listen and understand and be willing to take that step back before they get to that point as well. And it does seem to help. It helps a lot.
Yeah, because when you're in your 20s, like nothing stops you.
Oh, you're
You
good.
can keep up that crazy lifestyle and, doing everything and not sleeping and not eating and not exercising
Mhm.
because, you're still young, but all of a sudden one day it catches up with
It
you,
catches up big time.
you know,
Exactly.
because your body's going to tell you, your body's going to be like, no, we're done.
We're done with that one. Yeah, I mean, even something as simple as sleep. People, if you're trying to lose weight, just say you're trying to lose weight. If you're not sleeping, you're not going to lose weight. And for instance, with me, I know that because I guess I follow myself so closely at this point now. I like to biohack with various things, and if I have a day that I have to be up late and I'm up to say 1 or 2 in the morning, the next day I wake up and I'm puffier. We won't even talk about the brain fog mess,
Oh, yeah.
but it's like one day can change so much. And if you put day after day, week after week of this same sort of pushing yourself beyond what's normal and what's healthy, it just doesn't work.
I know I do the same thing. Like, I know that I'm supposed to be exercising, but I do I even like try tricks where I schedule it on my calendar and be like, okay, this is the time. I'm not going to do anything else during this time. And then I find out because I'm very bad at taking care of myself that that time comes around and I'm like, you know what? I'll exercise when I get everything else done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is nothing's ever done. There's always
Right.
something
There's always
else.
something else. Exactly. 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 One thing that I have done is I just make it first because I know if I wait till the end of the day, it is not going to get done. And I have dogs. So I have 2 dogs and they have to go out and they need their walk. So I just, I start a little earlier. I walk them for at least a half hour, sometimes longer. Then I come back and now I've added back my yoga because I had stopped doing it for a while. Added back my yoga. And so yes, it does take some time in the morning, but then when I'm finished and it's done, as opposed to trying to put it at the end of the day because it just doesn't. The other thing though, is that I stop beating myself up if I don't get it done because that just makes things even worse. If it doesn't, there are days when I just tell my doggies, I'm sorry, it's a 5-minute walk. We're coming back in and you're going to have to deal with it kind of thing. And that allows me that grace that makes it easier the next day.
And mindfulness, I know it's a simple thing, but I think I also, like I said, I'm probably your perfect client because, it's the same thing. It's like, all right, well, I know mindfulness and meditation, but it's like, it's always run, 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 go, go, go.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get people to incorporate those kind of healthy lifestyle practices?
I start them with morning because that's the easiest. Just saying before you turn your phone on, before you start scrolling, before you do anything else, before you let your mind go out, take that 5 minutes. And if it's gratitude, that's fine. If it's just kind of relaxing and breathing, because so many times we wake up and we're already in that fight or flight mode. Just taking some time to breathe for 2 or 3 minutes. And if you start with just a couple of minutes, you get those benefits and then you're willing to do it longer. So 2-3 minutes is better than no minutes. And we just kind of build on that. Once they're good with the morning, then we add it in the evening. and taking, say 10, 15 minutes before they go to bed, before they go to sleep. And when you start feeling the results, then you're willing to do more.
And then eating healthy isn't always the easiest thing because,
yes,
unfortunately, they call it fast food for a reason because it's really easy to just go grab some fast food and get on your way. So, what are some
what do we do with that?
Try to deal with that.
Yeah. And again, so I work with women who often travel a lot, who are busy, don't really have time to cook a lot, or maybe don't even want to cook a lot. And so I just kind of tell them they have two options. One is to batch. And I'm not going to say meal prep, because the second you say meal prep, it's like, something I have to do. But for instance, what I'll do is on Sunday, I instituted family dinner. And so we have my son come in and his girlfriend, everybody kind of gets together, and I make 3 different entrees. And we kind of feast on Sunday, but then we've got food through Wednesday and Thursday. And we just use that evening, for lunch and for dinner throughout the week. And then I'll do something smaller for the remainder of the week. But that makes a huge difference when I'm in the area. Yeah. If I'm traveling, then it gets a little tougher. And so what I found, there are some bars that I like, because, if you go to the airport, what do they give you now? Like crackers and...
Yeah.
Or you pay $10 for a nasty sandwich or something like that. So I actually often use that for intermittent fasting. So I'll have either intermittent fasting altogether, and I'll have my cup, which is often with me, that I'll fill with mushroom coffee. And once I get through, because you can't take your drink through, then I'll get water, and I'll fast that way if it's a relatively short flight. If it's longer, then I'll add some bars and things to it, some protein or fiber bars. And you feel better at the end of the day versus eating a whole lot of junk. And yeah, that's what we'll do there. And then, of course, when you're in the hotel itself, then you just have to pick a little more carefully what you're eating.
I know that's, it's hard because that's, some of the easy foods that you can get, like they taste good for like a total of 2 seconds, but
right.
Boy, after that 2-second like dopamine rush you get from eating those foods, then you're dealing,
exactly.
And I think that's part of being mindful, is that seeing what your body feels like after you eat that.
Afterwards, exactly.
Because I started doing that. Like, I love pizza, and we used to do that. Mm-hmm. Like Friday nights was our pizza night, because it was like, okay, cook during the week, and Fridays we'll get pizza. It's easy. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that on the days that I was eating the pizza, the next morning I'd wake up and my knees would kill me. I get my rings on my fingers. I'm bloated. And I'm like, oh, that's the pizza. Like, I don't know if it's the gluten or the dairy, but there's something with the pizza that was affecting me. So now I either go, all right, let me pick something different, or there are some days that I go, you know what, I'm just gonna eat the pizza and just deal with the next day.
And that's fine too, as long as you're aware of what it costs you, then it's okay. It's rather than telling somebody never eat pizza again in life, which is unrealistic. Just say that that if you eat this pizza, you're going to feel this way, but guess what? At this day, it's okay, and that in itself is so freeing.
Going back to the gut health, there's a lot of big health movements now, and a lot of different supplement companies. And I know at one point, I think I had probably like a whole counter full of supplements that I was taking, and I see an integrative doctor, and it was interesting because we were checking my levels and like nothing. So I was between wondering if maybe some of the supplements weren't ideal versus going back to gut issues. Can gut issues cause you not to absorb like nutrients in your food or vitamins or minerals? And
Absolutely. So one of the big things is if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, you're not going to absorb minerals, iron, magnesium. They're just not going to get absorbed no matter how much you're taking. There's also, are they flushing out too fast? So there's a lot of different things that can cause you be taking supplements and not getting the benefit.
That's really interesting. It's funny. On the other hand, there was a couple of years ago, I was drinking this product that was supposed to like get you to absorb your vitamins better.
Uh-huh.
And the funny thing was, all of a sudden I turned orange because,
Oh,
and it was funny because then I was absorbing my vitamins too much.
maybe a little bit too much of that beta carotene in there.
People were like, "Are you doing that fake tanning?" And I'm like, "No, I swear I'm not."
Oh. Wow. Yeah.
But, are there like some simple solutions that people can try to, other than looking at like the foods and food sensitivities, or are there anything else that they can try to do to heal their gut?
Yes. Yes. Very simple things that sound like what, but really, really work. Number one, chew your food. Like mom used to tell you, but how many times do we, and yes, I'm guilty of this too, we'll put something in our mouth, especially if it's dense, chew it 3 or 4 times, take something to drink and swig it down that way. Well, you've lost all of that digestion that goes on in your mouth and a lot of it that goes on in your stomach. So that's a huge thing. Slowing down when you eat, listening to music or something as opposed to, looking at the news or arguing with someone. That actually gets us into that rest and digest mode. Drinking less water when we're eating. Well, that's something. So like if we, because the more water you drink or the more liquid, you dilute your hydrochloric acid.
That's a good
You
point.
want to drink beforehand or drink after. Not that you're not going to drink at all, but don't drink your big gulp at the same time as you're having your meal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are just things that everybody can do and that make a huge, huge difference.
That's interesting because a lot of times you hear people, especially people that are dieting, they say like, "Oh, drink a big glass of water before you eat your meal so you feel full." But you may be affecting your body in other ways that you don't realize by doing that.
Exactly. So about a half hour before or sometimes up to an hour after, if you're going to have big volumes of liquid.
Sure. And I mean, of course, drinking during the day, throughout the day is
exactly.
But I never realized that the timing of that would affect things.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I don't know if we covered this already. I might be kind of going over it again. How does, like, other than symptoms, like, are there any tests to find out if you have a leaky gut?
Oh, yes. So there's probably the easiest thing to do. There is something that's called zonulin. It's a specific test. It can be on either on a stool test or you can get it added on with a food sensitivity test. So either way, you can have it as an add-on. And what that's letting you know is specifically zonulin is something that opens up those gaps that I was talking about. And so if your zonulin level is high, then in all likelihood you have a leaky gut. So either via a stool test where they look at all the bacteria that is in there, bacteria, parasites, worms, unfortunately, those sorts of things, or a food sensitivity test that's looking at, are you sensitive to wheat, gluten, whatever fruit, that kind of thing. And both of them can tell you that.
You mentioned parasites, and I hear that a lot in the holistic community about intestinal parasites, but that was something that was never covered for me in medical school, other than, you think of some of the serious parasitic diseases.
Right.
My understanding from things I've heard is that there's a good number of us that do have parasites that are living within us. Like,
especially if we've traveled. Like if you've gone to, other countries and things, then it's very, very, it's more common than if you haven't. But yes, yeah.
Is that easily found in like your traditional stool tests, or are they specific type of testing to find that information out?
It's the ones that I use something called the GI map, and they are literally looking at the DNA. They're not looking at the actual worm or whatever. They're looking at the DNA that gets passed off.
Nice.
And because, say, for instance, you get a stool sample and you take a little piece or whatever, and it doesn't have that particular parasite in that particular piece. Well, then you don't know. But if you're looking at whether or not the DNA is there, then the chances that you're going to pick that up is much, much higher.
I
So
like how a lot of these companies are developing these DNA testing, because when I was doing urogynecology, we were having the same issue with urinary tract infections, because
mm,
when someone pees in a cup and they, then it has to travel and go onto a petri dish, to travel to the lab. There's so many
right,
different things that can happen
right.
from the time that urine leaves your body to the time it's put on a petri dish. And just because bacteria doesn't grow out on that test doesn't mean that you don't
Doesn't
have bacteria.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
the DNA is so much more accurate. It's
much better.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But we're actually, I'll go on a little tangent about the bladder, but they found out, we used to think that urine was sterile, and they're finding out because this DNA testing that we actually do become colonized with bacteria in the bladder as we age. And just because the bacteria is there doesn't mean you need to treat it. You only treat it if you have symptoms. So that goes back to people
Really?
being put on antibiotics like crazy and affecting their gut.
Wow. So you're saying as you get older, you automatically have bacteria in your urine. Ooh.
Yeah, so
Because you know how
that's
they tell you could drink your urine because it's sterile?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe not.
yeah. But it basically becomes, you become colonized in
Oh,
especially
that makes sense.
postmenopausal. And I can't tell you how many people I've seen that they go to their doctor. And also, when a woman gives a urine sample, there's so many things that can happen. Like, you can get wash off from the vulva and bacteria in the cup. So just because there's bacteria there doesn't mean it's necessarily coming from inside the bladder. But I can't tell you the number of women I've seen that have been, especially postmenopausal women, that have been placed on antibiotics based on a test result, as opposed to
Wow.
symptoms.
Symptoms and wow.
And you
Wow.
think about all of the harm we're doing. Here we're trying to
Not
do.
got the good bacteria, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So
Huh.
talking about like our, well, because that's going to kill off our gut biome. And I was reading a couple of different things about how our gut biome, if it's healthy, it helps with our immune system.
Mhm.
So, and even it was interesting. I found another study too, that they looked at the gut biome of people who were obese, and they found that they had different bacteria in their intestines than somebody who was not obese. And then I'm wondering if that's the chicken or
Cause of the effect.
egg. Is
Right,
it because
right.
of their diet, or are they obese because maybe they don't have that bacteria that's making that serotonin.
That shuts off the one need for the food. Exactly. And I know that they're going to need to do more studies on that, because it opens up this huge you thought about whether it's the chicken or the egg, the cause of the effect. And that could be amazing if you find out, well, wow, maybe it is the cause. And if we fix this, then this goes away. That would be spectacular.
Do you find you prefer like supplemental probiotics versus fermented foods, or both, or neither?
I do both. I suggest both. And the reason I will usually start with the supplemental probiotics, just because I can control the dose and exactly what's going in. And if someone's not had any probiotics, I usually start them pretty slowly, like maybe one every other day for a while. Let that body get used to that, and then add one a day and go from there. And then add the various fermented foods. Just because if you go straight to fermented foods and you have too much, you can end up with a lot of bloating. And then they're like, oh, I'm not doing this. And then it's all gone. So
Yeah.
it's just a little easier to control if you do it, I think, the supplements first, and then add the fermented foods as well.
I find that with probiotics, there's a lot of marketing, and I hear time and time again, and I'm sorry for bad mouthing these products, but women think they're doing themselves good because they're like, there's a lot of constipation amongst women, and they're like, oh, but I'm taking a lot like Activia, or I get the product Align. And I mean, my personal thought is that those probably aren't the best, that there's better products out there. What is your take on that?
Oh, yeah. I usually go, to my doggies, I usually go with a shelf-stable probiotic. and one that has both the lactobacillus and the bifidobacter. Those are the two main ones that kind of control whether or not you have diarrhea or constipation. And I just want to take a step back when you said that a lot of women have constipation, and it's true. And they often don't even realize to the full extent that they are constipated. I mean, I have people who come in and tell me, I haven't gone in a week, or I usually go once or twice a month. And I'm like, what?
Where is that all going?
Exactly. And they wonder why they don't feel good or why they can't lose it. Well, because it's all sitting right in here. And so just getting them to understand that it's normal to go 1 to 3 times a day, as opposed to 1 to 3 times a month, is eye-opening. It's amazing to them, and it changes their life.
It's funny. I was with a bunch of friends recently, and you kind of wonder how you get into conversations. But there was the husbands and the wives, and somehow this came up, and the men were all like, "We don't understand this. Like, we go multiple times a day," and all the women, we were all like, "No, we go maybe 2 times a week, maybe once a week." So it's it's common. I mean, we just happen to have that conversation, but I think a lot of people aren't having that conversation.
Right.
And yeah, once a week is not normal. I mean, my husband even looks at me too and is like, there's something wrong with you. There's like, that is just not right.
Wow. Yeah, that is not enough.
And I start to wonder too, like with that foods and food products sitting in there, that's going to lead to inflammation in the intestines.
Right.
And chicken and an egg again, is that the inflammation causing the constipation, and is it adding to the inflammation?
Exactly. And, not only the food, but there are toxins that your body, because the toxins that your body makes gets excreted in the feces. And if you're not excreting the feces, they're just sitting there and recirculating. Same thing with estrogen. If you're, part of your estrogen cycle is some of it gets excreted. And if it's not, then you're going to recycle that and have what we call estrogen dominance. You're going to have symptoms of having too much estrogen, even if you're postmenopausal. Yeah.
That I never made that connection. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. You got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Which makes me now wonder, okay, now I'm putting like a lot of things together, connecting them, because we know that the incidence of polycystic ovarian syndrome is going up amongst women. Mm-hmm. And in traditional medicine, they don't understand why. I've heard theories of, well, it's because of our inflammatory diets and in stress hormones, and the stress hormones affecting us in causing this hyperestrogen state. Mm-hmm. And now, those people tend to be constipated, and now it's all connected.
It's all connected. It's amazing how everything is all connected. Yeah. So that would be if someone, came in with PCOS, and that might be one of the first things to do. Look at, are they going to the bathroom? If they're not, maybe look at their magnesium levels, because that's another thing we have, chronic across the board. The U.S. has a lot of people who have low magnesium levels. Low magnesium, you tend towards constipation. So all of these things would make sense.
And magnesium also helps with relaxation too.
Oh, it's huge. It is huge. Headaches, relaxation, going to the bathroom. It's one of those things that really runs your body. So if you're low in magnesium, you're not going to run right.
I don't know if this is true, but somebody was telling me recently, and I have to look it up still, that chocolate cravings can be a sign of low magnesium. So I don't know if that's, have you heard anything like that?
I have not.
That's something I gotta look into. I'm like, I think it's just the sugar. I think it's just the sugar cravings, but
I'll have to look into that one.
Yeah. So it's amazing just how much of our gut just affects our body, and
exactly.
And we don't really think about it that much.
Right. And it's when you finally realize what a big difference it makes, and you start becoming aware of it, then it just feels so much better to take care of your gut, to do the things that make your gut healthy, so that you feel better, so that you are better.
Are there any practices that you in particular do to kind of keep your gut healthy?
Well, the main thing is my diet. I tend towards I shouldn't tend towards, I'm almost 99% gluten free. So once in a while, as you were saying, I'll have something that is not on the plan. And I usually suffer for it for the next couple of days afterwards. So that's the biggest thing. Mostly dairy free. I will once in a while eat some, say, goat cheese or something of that sort, but mostly dairy free. And the third thing is really the stress, just relieving stress. So taking Epsom salt bath, which is magnesium, which is why it works so well. Something like that with lavender, and doing my meditation. I do morning and evening, just things like that, and also during the day. Just especially if I feel myself getting into that wound up state, like I'm trying to get a million things done, nothing's getting done, I'm getting more and more frazzled. So that's the kind of things that I will do.
That's amazing. Can you think of anything that you'd like to mention that I didn't bring up today?
Ooh, just the main thing would be that, what I started out with really is that we're all unique. And when we try to fit ourselves into these little cookie cutter plans and, this lifestyle or this plan or whatever, it usually doesn't work. And so what's best to do is to start listening to what our body is telling us, and then moving forward from there. Designing a plan that works for you with your life, with what's going on, and then going forward.
I think that's a good point, because we discuss, there's always like the next diet or the next plan that comes out, and like it becomes a trend and it becomes popular, and you'll have friends that do like really well on it, and then you might try it and you're like, this is not working, and then that adds to the stress.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I really like that approach.
Yeah. So
where can people find out more about you and what you do?
On my website, which is Premier Wellness. So that's www.premierwellness.com, and Premier is spelled PREMIERE, wellness.com. And we're also on Facebook at Premier Wellness with Dr. Lovelle, Lovelle. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Susan, for being with me today and telling us all these wonderful tidbits.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to offer any of your listeners to give them a power wheel so that they can know what's kind of, keeping them from being their healthiest. It takes literally 5 minutes, and all they need to do is kind of graft out on 5 different questions in these areas, and they'll actually see what's going on in their lives. It's eye-opening. That's
great. And where can they get that?
That'll be on the website as well, and I'll have it right front and center, so it'll be easier for them to download.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was wonderful speaking with you. Thank you. Right.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Pelvic Floor Store, your source for personal health. You can find us at www.pelvicfloorstore.com. For more information on today's episode and women's wellness, please go to drbetsygreenleaf.com.